Mandy. I am the historical fantasy author of The Rise of Riverstone and now The Pride of Riverstone. At the time of filming this, it's coming out in 10 days, but it should be out by the time this indie author review goes live. Right, today I am talking about a indie book that I read recently that inspired me to create something. Today I'm going to be talking about Chaos. This is by another author that I met on Twitter, and this copy that I got was actually through a giveaway, so it was very exciting. It came with some swag. It was beautiful. Generally not the type of genre that I go for, but I'm really glad that I got this copy because I really enjoyed the book. And we're going to go ahead and talk about it while we make old-fashioned whiskey cake. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with some yellow cake mix. So this book is set in a dystopian landscape. It's set like in 3699, I think was the date, and they kind of play around with, you know, back and forth a few events surrounding that date. In this world, there are people who have powers, but a lot of them have left, and the landscape's pretty bleak. It's not safe to go out at night. There's a lot of corruption, and actually every morning they have a death list where they go over who died during the evening. So there's a lot of fear anytime somebody is out after dark that they won't come home. The story centers around 4 teenagers. So 2 of them, Elsie and Henry, were raised in a very wealthy households. But what I really love and appreciate is just because they were raised in these wealthy households does not mean that they have that idyllic life. There's abuse, manipulation. It's not all silver spoons, especially if they don't do what society or their family deems is appropriate for their level of livelihood. The other thing I'm going to put in here next is a box of instant vanilla pudding. Jello. And then next to that, I'm going to add 4 eggs. So in this story, Elsie has powers. I mentioned those earlier. I don't want to get into what all her powers are because the author sort of reveals those throughout the story in like very key parts. But you should know that she is extremely strong and fast, and she can actually manipulate the environment. So like if you break a window, she can just bippity boppity boop and put all of the pieces back together. She is covered in scars, and then they kind of talk about why throughout the story, but because of these scars that she's covered in, she is horrifically bullied in school and just in society. She's been through some things, and because of her appearance, it sort of influences those around her to believe that she's evil, and she's kind of cool with that because she doesn't like hanging out with people anyway. Henry is her childhood best friend. It had a little bit of a falling out and are kind of in the beginning coming back together because Henry has recently acquired powers, which we learn is not normal. He kind of approaches her for help to learn how to control his powers, to use them, and also as an excuse to get back in touch with her because he's missed her. They're best friends. A couple of other characters of note is we have Charlotte, and Charlotte does not have powers. She's just very athletic. She's a good student. She has this friend group that can be a little shady, but she's just like your normal average teenage kind of personality. And then her boyfriend, Wesley, does have powers. He will touch like ceramic and his body will adapt those attributes of the ceramic or glass or what have you. So in the beginning of the story, we learn that Wesley's brother has been found murdered. And this sort of triggers the plot of the beginning of the story where they're trying to find out what happened to him. And then in trying to find out, all of these unlikely people sort of coming together. I will say that it's the first part of a series, and so it's setting up how these characters develop their powers, develop, the mystery surrounding this death, and then kind of delve into the underbelly of things that we thought that we knew about the world around them. I know that could not be more vague. So I'm gonna take my eggs, bloop those in there, and then I need a half a cup of oil. And what's fun is it doesn't say what kind of oil, but because I have baked before, I'm gonna do vegetable oil. I'm going to do a cup of whole milk. It says you can do 2% low fat, but I didn't want that sort of negativity in my life, so I'm going to do whole milk. So as I said earlier, this is a dystopian novel, which again, I kind of have a hard time getting into. Maybe that's because I'm from the 1800s, and I'm not usually into stories where the characters have special powers or abilities, because a lot of times I feel like those are used as easy plot devices. But what I really appreciate about this is that these powers, in a lot of cases, they're more of a hindrance than actually helpful. You have these kids who have a lot of trouble controlling them, especially as teenagers. There's a lot going on in your brain. There's a lot of high emotions. And then sometimes they'll use their powers for evil when they're in emotional states. And so it's not always a fun thing. And it doesn't make their lives any easier. In some ways it makes their lives a lot harder, especially in Elsie's case, because of her reputation and her abilities make her an outcast. The author did a wonderful job of making actually every single one of these characters multi-dimensional, with their own motivations, their own emotional baggage, and their own sort of, development throughout the story, where you get a lot revealed. And sometimes I do actually forget that they are teenagers. I think they're like senior age, like 17, 18, that kind of thing. But they're so hardened by their reality that you kind of forget. And then you're kind of like, are they really going to school right now? There's so much going on. Okay, so I've got my 1 cup of pecans. I'm gonna mix that in with my batter. So now it's the secret ingredient, and that's whiskey. So I need 1.5 fluid ounces, which really isn't a lot. We're not like Henry in the story. So our friend Henry is very damaged as well. He grew up in a very rich household, but also very abusive household. And he has dealt with those issues by turning to drugs and alcohol. And one of his favorite things to do is just sip, sip, sippy on his flask. And I think at one point that they said it was whiskey, but I'm not sure. And I am not a whiskey fan, so every time that Henry takes a pull of his flask, I'm just like, what? That's another thing the author did a great job of, is each character has their own voice, but aside from their own voice, they all also have their own little tics that's just so very unique to each one. And one of them, Charlotte, like picks at the sides of her thumbs, and I just felt seen, because I'm horrible at that. So I was just like, I get you. I am going to mix for 3 minutes by hand. Okay. I did at first was like, oh, does that mean a hand mixer? But I was told, no, this is old fashioned. There's, some weird, mysterious people kind of hurting people. And of course, there's a lot of speculation and suspicion when it comes to Elsie, because she's terrifying. So she also has this added stress of having to clear her name, but then also like pretend like she's not stressed about needing to clear her name because she supposedly doesn't give a crap. We all know underneath people who pretend like they don't give a crap is like a marshmallow. Oh my god, is 3 minutes up yet? So I preheated the oven to 350 degrees while I'm continuing to stir for 3 minutes. I have a minute left. It's the longest 3 minutes of my life. So it's been 3 minutes, thankfully. I'm taking a bunt pan and I'm going to grease it really well. Now we're going to pour it into there. And hopefully not make a mess. So when I got my copy, it came with a fantastic candle, and it has like vibes of bourbon and vanilla, and like it smells fantastic. And so this kind of reminded me of that. It's got bourbon and vanilla and all of that vibe. Anybody want to lick the spoon? I'm going to put it in the preheated oven for 50 to 60 minutes. Towards the end of that being cooked, I'm going to start on the icing. Oh man, why would somebody do that to themselves? No offense. So I'm gonna have my saucepan on medium heat, and then I'm going to add a half of a cup of melted butter. And then I have a full cup of sugar. And then to that, I'm going to add a half of a cup of whiskey. And then so I'm going to stir that mixture until it is completely dissolved and then kind of a brownish color. Okay, the big reveal. Nom, nom, nom. Okay, so next I'm going to poke some holes in the cake. And the point of this is we're going to next spoon some of that sauce over. So once I have several holes poked in the cake, I'm going to take 3/4 of my sauce and I'm going to pour it on top of it. I gotta let that sit for 15 minutes. Next step is to flip it onto a plate. And this is the part that makes me real scared, because this is a moment of truth of whether or not this actually worked. And also try not to burn myself at the same time. That looks yummy. So now the last step is to drizzle the top with my remaining sauce. I wish that you could smell this. It smells amazing. Behold, it smells delicious. Need another one just to be sure. That's so delicious. I might even become a whiskey fan. I don't even know what to say now. Except if you are looking for a unique and imaginative urban fantasy that's also dystopian novel with some badass teenager characters, I suggest you check out Chaos. I will have the links down below where you can find it. Please support indie authors because they are amazing, and some of their stories are incredible and, like I said, unique, and they don't always get the PR that the big name authors do. So please check them out. And also don't forget to check out The Rise of Riverstone if you haven't already. By the time you see this, then The Pride of Riverstone should also be out. They're both available in paperback and Kindle, and I do plan on having a hardcover of The Pride of Riverstone as well, but so far we do have a hardcover of The Rise of Riverstone. So please check that out, like and subscribe, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and eat cake whenever possible.